I guess that's all I really want to say about it. And I'm gonna bounce it over to you guys.
Great, thanks, Rachel. That was the best. That was the best intro. I'm hungry and I just want to go start snacking right now.
Sorry, everybody. But, hopefully, you got
so as I said, yeah, I actually did have some granola, so you know. As I said before, I'm Ann Barrett with Doran. I'm the CEO of Doran. You know, the purpose of this meeting is for us to give all of you just a overview of where we're at. We're at the early stages of planning and design. And so getting thoughts, ideas, input, understanding, you know, kind of your first reactions to this is important. I do just want to share a little bit about my personal history because I think it's pretty relevant to this project. So I grew up in Minneapolis. I grew up over by Kenny Park, and I spent a lot of time hanging out in Uptown when I wanted to feel cool, and I was, you know, not cool. But I also went to Filio, and John and I were joking about this because we didn't really have a lot of money, but it was like the place to go. So we'd split an order of calamari between like 5 people and get waters. I'm sure we weren't the favorite customers, but you know, this destination, this corner is something that I think, unless you live here, you're from here, you know, there's an energy to Uptown that's always been there in some form or another, and I think still is there today. We really believe in it. We believe in Uptown. I believe in Uptown in the city. When North Pond approached us and approached me, my first conversation with Sam Aiken, who's one of the principals at North Pond. And by the way, they're the owner of the center and we're partnering with them on this. So our involvement is, John is leading architecture, our construction company will build the project, and then we'll help manage it, or we will manage it. So we will continue to be involved long-term with the project. Sam, and he was describing, I knew of North Pond, but he was talking a little bit about where his niche is and where he feels his development skills are. And he said to me, you know, we really like to go to, we're retail specialists, and we like to go to areas that the local developers have overlooked, to places that have never really fully lived up to their potential. Like there was a vision, there was an idea, and it just never really was what it could have been. And I think that to me perfectly describes what we all used to know as Calhoun Square. You know, it didn't, as much as, you know, this place is a destination, that the way that functioned within the community of Uptown, I think wasn't ever fully right. And, you know, I think we can have lots of differences of opinion on that, but that's how I feel about it. And so I was really energized listening to them talk about their vision for and why they bought 7 Points originally, to really look at this is a key commercial center of our city that's part of the rhythm and heart of the city, and it should be focused on much more frequent daily trips, those types of tenants that are local, tenants that are not somebody that you could go to a mall, you know, and go shop at that same store. So that was the original idea, but they haven't done a lot with housing, and we're, I guess I would say we're experts or pretty experienced with doing housing. So what we did is worked for a number of months on a design that incorporated both a redo of 7 Points, a different entry with a huge focus on bringing pedestrian traffic and energy and life to Hennepin, and incorporating commercial. That is a key commercial area, and in my opinion, there needs to be commercial tenants on that Hennepin side of the street. And then adding housing, high quality multifamily housing, increasing the density, and just continuing to add to the housing options within Uptown. The other piece of this development is the parcel of land on Lake Street. The hope is that we will work with Common Bond, and they will do 100% affordable housing project there. It will likely not be constructed at the same time because their process for getting an affordable project done is different than ours, but that's the idea, is that that would also happen. Now, I can't say to you guaranteed that's what's going to happen. We will comply with the city of Minneapolis affordable housing ordinance regardless, but that is right now the plan for how we will do that. So I want to leave quite a lot of time for just talking about design and talking about you're getting feedback from you. So I think I'll pause there, turn it over to John. And if you have questions as we go, I think feel free to just interrupt or raise your hand. This can be a kind of a free-flowing conversation. So John, take it away.
All right. So I'm John Ferrier, President of Architecture, as I said before. And we are just really excited to be part of this project. And we believe that the development that we're proposing is of great benefit to both the neighborhood and to the city. The mixed use development provides increased pedestrian traffic to existing and future commercial uses with all the added households. And without the redevelopment, our fear is that tenants will continue to leave the area, which we want to avoid. So I think I will share my screen and we'll just run through the plans really quick. Can you guys see my screen? Great. So this is as you know, the corner of Lake Street and Hennepin. So this was recently redone to really open up that corner and make it more inviting for pedestrians. This was done recently by North Pond. And we wanted to bring that same kind of life along Hennepin by increasing that pedestrian realm. So I'll just go through this. It's not complying. There we go. So this is an aerial. And as you can see to the north, this is the portion of the development that will remain. And this is the new proposed mixed use portion. So just to give you some bearings, this is the existing 7 points ramp. And this is the pedestrian bridge that goes from the ramp to the retail. So that will remain. This is a great aerial shot of the development. So in the foreground is the parking ramp. The red dotted line is the area of the new development. So I'll just run through the plans quickly. This is the basement level. So the basement level will house the parking for a proposed grocer. The access to the parking for that grocer will be off of Girard. As you can see from the parking layout, the arms to get into the parking for the grocer, there is plenty of room for stacking of cars. And we did that to keep the traffic off of Girard and off of 31st so that the cars don't stack and on those public areas. As we go up to the first level, this black line is kind of the demarcation between the new proposed development and the retail center. And as you see along Hennepin, we really wanted to drive the pedestrian traffic to Hennepin. So we're creating some new landscape areas. We're creating some new outdoor seating areas to really bring life to Hennepin and to activate the street. On the top of the screen is Girard. So Girard will serve two purposes. It'll be it'll provide the service for the grocer, but this will not become a thoroughfare. So cars cannot cut through here. We really wanted to keep the pedestrian connection through Girard, as the trucks that are servicing the grocer will be infrequent, and they'll be at certain times of the day. So we really think that we can maintain this pedestrian access through Girard. The access for the resident parking is on the next floor up, and that is off of 31st Street right here. In addition, along Hennepin, we're having some active uses. We're proposing a restaurant space, and then the lobby and entry for the residents will be along Hennepin as well. Sorry about that. As we go up to second floor, this is the parking for the residences, and it also has some of the mechanical space for the grocery store. You can see in the retail center, we're creating a new atrium, and you'll be able to see this a little bit better in the renderings that I have later. But we're creating a new 2-story atrium that's really a grand entry, and there's a grand stair that connects the entry to the existing parking garage. As we go up to 3rd floor, this is the floor where we have our outdoor amenity space for the residences. And we really wanted to push those active uses to Hennepin. So as you can see, we have a pool and some outdoor areas, maybe a bocce court, maybe some outdoor yoga that really brings life to that Hennepin side of the development. Another reason we oriented it this way is to reduce the mass, and you'll see that in the renderings later. To have it oriented this way, it reduces the mass and that feeling along Hennepin. And also, this is the best location for the pool, so that it gets the most sun during its operating hours. This is levels 4 through 6, which are more residences. And finally, the top floor, more residences, and we have an entertainment suite with an outdoor patio area that will have great views to the lake. All right, elevations. So we'll talk some materials. So at the base of the building, we wanted to bring in some of the brick, and we were inspired by not only the historic portion of the retail center, but by the brownstones of the neighborhood. So we wanted to incorporate that so that it feels like it fits into the neighborhood. And then the residences above, they're set off by different materials of fiber cement and metal panel. And we feel like those simple forms and simple materials set that off from the base level. This bottom is along 31st Street. So this is the south elevation. And then the top elevation, this is the north elevation. And the white you see here, that is the retail center in the foreground. And then this is beyond the residences. And finally, this elevation is along Girard. So let's look at some rendering sketches. So this is the new, this is a sketch of the new entry to the retail center. As you can see there, you can see the 2-story atrium space, as well as some of the new seating areas and landscaping that we think will bring life to Hennepin. This is another view of it, and you can see that grand stairway beyond. So it'll act as circulation, and there'll also be some seating. You can sit on different areas of the stair. On the right here is an outdoor area for the proposed restaurant space. And then on the left is another seating area. As you move further south, this is the entrance for the residences. And as I said before, orienting the amenity deck this way really reduces that mass, as you can see here. And then this is the corner of 31st and Hennepin, where the proposed grocery entrance will be. And there's also another outdoor seating area at this entrance as well. And this is just another shot of that same angle. It shows, you can see the architecture of the residences a little bit better in this view. So this is a look on the corner of 31st and Girard. So one thing I want to point out here is that this area here, where there's a blank wall, is where the parking ramp on the inside goes up here and goes down here. So there was a blank wall there, and we really wanted to activate that wall. So our ideas are to provide a public art installation with local artists. So we haven't really fully designed that yet, but we have some ideas to make that a really prominent corner with some local art. Some of the things that we're working on currently are refining the architecture of the residences. And in addition, we're working on really defining this pedestrian path through Girard. So those are some comments that we got from other neighborhood groups, and those are some of the things that we're working on. So I'm excited to hear your comments, and we're here to answer any questions.
Oh, I see that there's already a couple questions up there, but I just want to ask one thing real quick. I just want to understand the sort of limits of the scope of your project. I know you mentioned some pieces of like the existing retail with the stair that you'll be working on sort of at that threshold of this new development, but to what extent does the scope of your work affect like interior layout of the retail or anything else that, you know, happens to the north of that stair component?
Yeah, great. So we'll be remodeling the common corridors. In addition, there's a new tenant that is coming from some of the owners of Can Wonderland. It's an art and rec space. So they will be doing a project in this corner here. In addition, we're relocating the Jimmy John's here. And then there's some talks about what to do with the existing H&M space. I don't think those have been fully realized yet, but those are, you know, the scope of our work is mainly those common corridors.
And just one other thing to add to that, the big escalator that exists will be gone. And so you can kind of see it here, but it will feel very different than it does today, because you won't have kind of that big mass, in the center. So there's a facelift that will happen, and that work is a little bit of it is kind of TBD depending on how the tenant mix kind of takes shape, but there is a scope that addresses the interior of the existing center, as John said, to remodel those corridors.
And in addition, we will be cutting the building back in these areas to provide those pedestrian spaces. And the new entry, as you saw in the rendering, will be quite nice. It'll be a 2-story space, very welcoming, if I can get to it here. So we're really excited about this new aspect of the building as well.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So I would guess that like we don't have like a ton of people on the call, but I would guess that the people we do have a lot of questions, myself included. So I'm going to ask just to help facilitate the conversation that each of you just asks one question at a time. I'll try to like call on people as it's coming up. Also leverage the chat, and then we'll just keep circling through as time allows. The other thing I didn't clarify before we got started with this is the rest of our agenda is fairly loose with updates and things, but I don't want to like commandeer like all of your time, Anne and John. So do we want to call for like a stopping point to conversation at some point? Do we say we go until 7:30, or is that too much? Or are we good with going?
No, I think that's great.
Okay.
I can say that my updates are like 10 to 15 minutes tops. Very, very limited. I will concede as much as you need for the questions for this.
Okay.
meeting.
Great.
Well, we'll have a goal of 7:30. We'll see how close we get. Okay. So I think the first hand I saw go up was Katie's, so I'll start with her.
Oh, great. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. First comment, I love the open stair, and that'll attract more people to use to not use energy to go up and down, like electricity to go up and down. So I was really excited to see that. And two, I was curious about the parking area. Will it be so designed that in the future it could be repurposed as other space if the parking need in the area were to go down?
Yeah, maybe I'll take that one, and then John fill in. I think the answer is yes. The way that the parking's designed is it's flat floor plates. You do have ramps that get you up and down, but it's not, some parking decks that are designed where you're driving at an angle the entire time that you're parking, those would be more difficult to repurpose. So these are not that way. So, in theory, the answer to that is yes, they could be repurposed.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Sorry, I gotta be quick.
Hi. So Ann, I just heard that. Uptown needs more parking. And so the parking that's already there, I do not want it repurposed. I want more. Where are you going to be putting in more? With that area needs more parking.
Yeah, so the way that we've designed this building, there's 2 levels of parking within the building. So we are adding more. I think, and John can weigh in on this. He knows more about this than I do, but I know that we're exceeding the minimum parking that the city would require under zoning for the project. But then the other thing that we're taking a really close look at is the ramp, the existing parking ramp. There's an opportunity to restripe that to add more parking if it's needed. And so that's something that in many ways could be, it's a flexible thing that you could capture some more spaces there if needed. So I think there's a balance here because this needs to be a place that's accessible, and if you're in a car, you can get here, and it's achievable to find a parking space that's within a block or so of where your destination is. But then also we want to make sure that the pedestrian and bike experiences that we're thinking about that too with the design. So I think for us, we felt like this is the parking that we've designed in the building is the right amount for today, but it could flex in the future if it's not needed. And I think from my standpoint, the market would dictate that. It's not anything that we would ever eliminate or take away. If we have residents that are using it, we'd keep it.
Yeah, like I say, the problem, so let me talk about the parking a little bit more. Lisa Bender took away all the parking down Hennepin, which became a real problem, as you can see, to what happened to Hennepin. So, we need to get if we could even get some of that parking back, it would be great. Then people, when I shop in Edina on 50th, I shop because I can park right down the street and stop right into the pet place or wherever I want to stop in there and then keep going. I'm not biking when it's 20 below, I'm not getting on a bike and biking to Uptown. So it'd be really nice if somebody could do something with that parking. And if there's some way to reverse, and get some parking in there, since you guys are changing the layout and everything else, maybe there is something that you could do with the parking on Hennepin and reverse something that Lisa Bender did and should never have done.
One thing that
get some of those stores back.
One thing that I would say, and this doesn't pertain to this project, but just as a general statement to this group, is there is a proposal right now that the city council has studied for a couple of years, and I think they're voting on it fairly soon, related to potentially eliminating even more parking up Hennepin. And so I know that the business community has spoken out against it, saying exactly what you just said, that we have to support business activity and allow for people to park, close to where their destination is. But that voice has been strong. If the council heard from residents who said the same thing, I think that would be powerful. So I'd encourage you to reach out to the council members in this area and make your voice heard on that issue, because I agree, and I think that keeping Hennepin active is key to the health of Uptown.
And just one more comment on the parking. We're actually exceeding the maximum allowed parking. So there are things called amenity points that you need if you exceed the maximum parking. So they're having us do things because we're exceeding the maximum parking. So that's something that, like Ann said, if you come to the Planning Commission meeting and want to comment on that, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm sorry. In my clarification of how this is going to go, I forgot to mention that I'll go ahead and call on people too, just to help keep us a little bit organized. So thank you. So Katie, and then Peter, how about you go next?
Sure, thanks. I was actually going to go in the other direction and was curious, given that the current parking ramp is significantly underutilized, I was curious, given that either residential or commercial square footage is more valuable significantly than parking space, if there's any consideration on removing the amount of parking you're putting in there currently, since you're exceeding the maximum, to make that a more usable square footage. And I was also, again, related to that, you kind of touched on this a little bit, there's an excellent plan coming forth on the Hennepin reconstruction that is going to be encouraging, bus rapid transit, walking and biking on this corridor. You're talking about activating this corridor. I was wondering if you could speak to, again, the mixture of what your parking sets are and how it relates to that plan. And again, if you're trying to activate the corridor, how this project is going to help with that future Hennepin plan.
Sure. So first thing on the parking ramp, it's what's happened over time with that ramp is it actually was utilized quite heavily, pre George Floyd's murder and the unrest that unfolded in our city, and the use of it has been, I guess I'd say, maybe challenging to track since that point in time. We just heard about a month ago or so that there's a proposal to renovate the theater and create kind of a venue similar to like the Armory, only smaller. And so that, if that happens, there's other proposals that we're watching in this area that I think may dictate ultimately what the use of that parking ramp looks like in the future. Where I'm at with it is no one likes a parking ramp, but it's important, I think, to have that ramp there to support the retail that exists today. And I think that it's premature right now, given where we sit, to change that use. And so if as we'll own the parking ramp, so that's part of the property that we own. If over time in the years to come it's underutilized, it would be to, I think, everyone's benefit, including ours, to figure out how we could repurpose that ramp or do a development or something there. But as far as this project, maintaining that parking is part of what we're going to do. We think it will support some of the retail that we're proposing, and potentially will support some guest parking and some overflow parking for the residences, because we are under parked. If you just gauge the parking that building of this size, the residents would typically demand if this project were in an area that wasn't quite as accessible to public transit. It's kind of a long-winded way to say we're going to hold and see how this goes and watch it. And then if that parking ramp is an underutilized asset, it's absolutely something we'd be looking at in the future.
I know it's not my turn, but just to clarify that. So what is the number, let's say for just the residential level, then the amount of parking that you're providing as a per unit calculation?
So we're providing 116 stalls. And let me do the math quick here. So 116 stalls and 264. So we're below a 0.5 ratio per unit.
Okay, so that, I just want to clarify that, because I know that the rules around the maximum parking has recently changed. And so I just want to make sure that people know that as well. It's not like we're providing 2 parking spots for every unit that's up there as well. So.
Right. Yep.
Okay. I think next up, Kevin.
Hey, yeah, thanks. And glad to hear that you're interested in repurposing that. I'm one of the folks that sees better value for flexible uses, not just storing automobiles. So I appreciate the flexibility. My question is about the housing mix in the proposed development, type of unit, size of units, and then a little bit more of interest on, you talked a little bit about the affordable housing component. Can you just remind me of that, what that would be on the Lake Street frontage, or that's not part of the Doran property, that's part of the other property, right?
So I'll talk about that, and then John can jump in and get into more details on the unit mix. There's multiple ways that we could comply with the Minneapolis Affordable Housing Ordinance. The preferred way, because we think it would benefit Uptown, and would be that Common Bond would do an affordable development as part of this entire project, and that would be on that Lake Street parcel. But we're at the early stages of working through that. And so what I just don't want to do is, promise something. I want to be transparent with where we're at, but I don't want to promise something and then, something doesn't work with that. And, so that's the plan as of right now. If that doesn't happen, the other way that we could comply is that we would have affordable units within this project. And those units would not be any different, like from a finish, anything. You wouldn't know which units are affordable. They would just be a certain percentage of the units within this building would be designated affordable. We've done that in a number of other projects, and that works as well. So that's an alternative way that we could comply. But right now, the focus is the 100% affordable project on Lake Street through Common Bond.
And then, sorry, just to follow up, the housing mix, that 1, 2 studios, 1s, 2s, what are?
Yeah. And John, you want to touch on that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a mixture of, we have alcoves, studios, 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. So our smallest alcove is about just under 400 square feet. I would say, our average 1 bedroom is about 584. So we do have a mixture of different unit types and different sizes.
Thanks. The total number, you said 264?
We're at 264 presently, yes.
Awesome, thank you.
I think if I'm keeping track right, Rose, you're next.
Thank you. I have a question about, I think it's the Girard portion of the street, and you kind of touched on this, that this is probably feedback that you've received before today. So it sounds like it's in the works, but I'm curious about, I love the idea of activating Hennepin. I think that area has so much potential that isn't being utilized. So like the seating there, I think is really key. I love that idea. I'm curious about the pedestrian space behind the building, or I guess like throughout Girard. I know previously there were like restaurants there, and that kind of like gave a little bit more life to the space. But I'm curious about what the plan is to ensure that, like, especially because some of it looks like it's like loading docks. And so how do you create kind of like what's the plan to create a safe space and a welcoming space, like a space that people want to be in, as opposed to a space that because I live in the area, that somebody would have to walk through just to get to where they're going.
Yeah, so that's something that we're currently working on, how to enhance that pedestrian realm. So this, as I said before, this will not be a thoroughfare for car traffic. The service vehicles that are servicing the potential grocer will be very infrequent, and they will be at certain times of the day. So we're looking at ways to maintain that pedestrian connection. So one of the things is pavement, having a change of pavement to show where that safe pedestrian pathway is. We're looking at a bike path through there. So we've as our submittal for the Planning Commission, we'll have some additional ideas for that. But yes, that is something that we are paying particular attention to. In addition, we're looking at ways to revitalize the face of the ramp. Some of the architecture on the face of the ramp is pretty dated. So making that more welcoming, and in addition, some better lighting through there, I think will make that a better place for pedestrians to safely travel.
Cool, thank you.
Follow-up question on that. So the access for the loading dock, are those trucks pulling in and then backing out, or they do still need to continue the length of Girard to get out of there, or how does that work?
Here, I'll show you in the site plan here. So they will travel, this is a one-way to this point here. The only two-way portion of it is to allow access to the existing ramp. So the trucks will travel through here and they'll back in, and then they'll go out this way. So they will go out onto 31st.
So similar to like Hennepin downtown where only buses are allowed. So only the trucks would be allowed to come down that. and
Only the
cars-
trucks, yep.
Okay.
There'll be signage. We're looking at different types of signage to increase that pedestrian safety. But like I said, those trucks will be infrequent.
Okay, sorry, I feel like I had another question, but it's not my time. Wait a minute, it is my time. I have a completely off the wall question, but it is my number one driver on what the heck is happening on this corner. Who is in charge of branding this building?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So we we actually haven't. I wouldn't say that we have a solid agreement on that. Not that we disagree. It's just not something that we've fully talked about yet. But typically on projects that we're developing, we will do that internally with our marketing team. Not to say that we haven't used outside consultants, which in the past is something that we've done on some projects, kind of depending on the project. And I would say that this is one that just reacting to the question, there needs to be a lot of thought put into that, and a lot of discussions with the neighborhood group. And so that is not something that we're just going to say, hey, I like the color blue, and so let's maybe, like, we will that will be a process. And typically that's something that we don't start until after we're approved, and oftentimes after we're under construction. So for example, we have a building that we developed and we're building right now in Minnetonka, and it's coming out of the ground, and we haven't even started talking about the name. So different for different projects, but that's something that typically comes a little bit later for us once the architecture's set, done, and we're off and running.
Okay. Really how I should have phrased that is, are we married to 7 Points, and will there be a proper branding exercise that does include like proper research around the history of this place and engagement with the community? Because it's too important to just be so kind of, frivolous, I guess, with how we identify it.
Okay, that's a good question, and let me clarify my answer. So I was thinking we were talking about really like the name of the residential building, which will have a different name than 7 Points. I can say that.
Okay.
Whether 7 Points gets renamed or rebranded is not anything that we have talked about, and I'm not sure where North Pond is at on that, but we'll take that feedback. If you're kind of saying, hey, can you guys be a little bit more creative and come up with something, we'll I think as the overall brand exercise unfolds, we'll add that to the discussion.
Yeah, I think that I know that I speak for several people, and it's not just me, that the choice to brand it 7 Points, as long as we could feel that was a temporary solution as a way of moving past sort of the history associated with its previous name, like, right, that's okay, as long as we know that proper time and work will go into branding it accordingly, because it does have so much history in this neighborhood. And it would have just, I mean, if that's its new permanent name, why didn't we just call it Uptown Square, right? Like that would have been so much more easier and relatable, right? So
Sure.
okay, so that's my question. I think Katie was next, but now I don't see her hand up. Katie, are you out there and did you have something still?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I have a question about sustainability elements. What have you baked into this design, and are you seeking any certifications such as LEED, B3, et cetera?
You know, we're just now looking at what sustainable elements we're going to bring into the building. But, you know, as an architect and as a design firm, we always strive to make our buildings as sustainable as possible, just because it's the right thing to do. So some of the things we do is a reflective roof to reduce the heat island effect, native plantings, you know, things of that nature. But we are just looking at what we're going to do from a sustainability standpoint.
Are you familiar with the utilities programs called Energy Design Assistance?
Yes.
Okay. Will this project be going through that?
Yep, we go through the EDA process on most of our projects.
Great. Thank you.
I will add to that comment as well that Lowry Hill East, and I recognize that this project isn't necessarily officially in our neighborhood, but we do have some pretty bold and very intentional goals around sustainability for development in our neighborhood, and we'll make sure that you guys get a copy of that.
Okay, great. I would appreciate that.
I will also note that Passive House has been seen to be cost effective for multifamily. There's examples here in Minneapolis. So anyway, just wanted to shout that out.
Great, thank you.
Let's see, I think Dan and Andrea were next up.
Thank you. We're very excited about this. Regarding the grocery store, I think hopefully you agree, Ann and John, that it has to be either kind of a different kind of grocery store or a little bit more upscale. That's a comment, and that maybe you can comment on that. And the second thing is, I've walked around there lately. I thought Arts and Rec was going to be coming this year. Do you know when they're going to start building it?
I think Sam isn't on, Sam from North Pond, but I think their intention is to begin construction in the next couple of months. Right now, they're pricing the improvements, and the design has been completed. So I think they plan to start construction in the next 2 months.
So what do you know about the grocery store? What type of grocery store are we looking at?
So yeah, we are looking at grocery opportunities that are new to the market, and they will be unique. We do not have our grocer yet, but there are several out there that we've looked at. So yes, it will be a unique grocery store, and it will be, as you said, more upscale.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, John, quick follow-up on that. And yeah, glad to hear that. Is there talk of sort of attracting sort of a Lunds or an existing anchor grocery tenant that's already in the neighborhood, or would you be looking at a new concept?
We are really looking at more of a new concept. So I know that Sam has talked to Trader Joe's, and they weren't coming into the market this area. He's talked to a number of the local grocery stores, but it will be a new concept. Absolutely.
And sorry, can I ask a quick follow-up about sort of the dolphin rack piece? How will that, because I think there's a rooftop component of that. How will that
Yes.
interact with your design?
So, we're just looking at that now. So part of the art and rec space was they have ideas, of course, of the rooftop, and then bringing in public art to that northeast corner. And we have the public art on the southeast corner, and those two we believe would communicate and complement each other.
Paul, you had put something in the chat. That's the next thing I have up.
It was essentially Katie's question, so we can.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. And then I lost track of the chat. Are there,
Scott had his hand up there, Joe.
what was that? Okay, Scott, go ahead. Thank you, Kevin, for keeping me on task.
Hi, this is Scott. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
good. So I live next door to the Aldi on Lindale. I think most people are familiar with the apartment building that went up there a couple years ago with the ground level grocery store. And I can say there's a really nice benefit to having a grocery tenant. One, it's convenient. Also, there's just consistent daily traffic in and out. I don't mean car traffic, lots and lots of biking traffic and walking traffic. So I think it helps activate sort of a more or less a permanent sort of pedestrian experience. People will be walking there all the time, just like people are walking over to the urban Target that's on Lake Street.
Absolutely. And we actually designed and built the Aldi and the Rex 26 building that you're adjacent to. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We wanted to bring in a retailer that drives daily traffic to the area, as opposed to destination retail, like the fashion or the furniture that you go there every once in a while, or with furniture maybe once a year or once every 2 years. So we really wanted to drive that daily traffic. And also, as you said, it's a great asset for residents in the area with the increased foot traffic.
If you think about, somebody's going to say, oh, I'm going to walk over there. It's Saturday morning. So they go over, get breakfast. There's that new breakfast place opening up across the street, or you go to the bookstore or whatnot. So there's going to be a lot of sort of complementary things that go on. And I think having the daily neighborhood traffic in and out, just, instead of trying to attract people from outside uptown, like, oh, come see us. We got some shiny new building or shiny new commercial, upscale this or, kind of thing. I think this just brings the neighborhoods like, hey, I live on Hennepin, 32nd and Hennepin or wherever. People just walk to the grocery store. I mean, they don't even have to plan it necessarily. There's that urban experience where going to the corner store will be there. So that's just my general comment. And so I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Great, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Peter had a couple extra questions in the chat. Do you want to just ask them here, Peter? Wait.
Sure. I was just curious on kind of aesthetic elements. So one is on the brownstone piece. I like the homage to the brownstones. That's been great, especially on the ground floor. I was curious if you'd be willing if you would consider expanding that homage up. A lot of the brownstones are not first floor brownstone and then something different. They're kind of brownstone the whole way. Would you consider doing a full brick facade?
We've looked at adding different elements of brick. That budget drives that a lot, and also structurally how high you can go up with brick is limited. So what we were trying to do with the coloring of the building above is pay homage to some of the colors, and have a different material that sets off the residents from the base of the building. So that's how we're really incorporating those types of elements.
Yeah, adding to that, that kind of rust color that you saw in the renderings is, we're looking at different materials, but we want that to be some type of an architectural metal panel that will pop and have a different, it will look different than the other materials that are going on there. So it's hard to kind of get that feel from these renderings, but that's the idea. One of the logistical challenges with this building, and I'll just back up a second, we have done buildings where we've taken brick up higher than we're intending to here. and this is just part of the challenge of constructing in this location, which is, you know, very urban. It's going to be a tight site. The construction logistics plan is going to need to be dialed in, and when we do the grocer space, we'll need to have that ready, so then a grocer could come in and get that built out and get that opened on their time frame. If we're putting brick above, that is a element of our construction process that potentially can cause issues from a schedule standpoint and could impede that time frame. So as we looked at this kind of holistically and our strategy for this building, it was one of the things that we talked through, and that kind of the two big drivers are the tightness of the site and the time frames that we know a grocer will require, that drove the decision to look at and utilize the materials that we selected for the upper portion of the building.
Just follow there. So the brick on all the levels is just facade brick, right? Like so first floor is going to be an underlying cement structure, and then there's a brick facade, or is it actual brick being laid?
It will be a CMU with a backup with a brick face.
Okay. So is the brick laying when it's in that facade or face area, is that a significantly different application timeline than a composite or a metal?
Yes, it's a much more labor intensive process to lay the brick.
And it's the seasonality of it is the other thing that's challenging. Right. It's hard to do that through the winter, whereas, you know, metal panel or siding you can do year round.
Got it. And then my second question in the chat was, I was curious, you know, you've talked a lot about activating Hennepin, which is great. Like, I'm really excited about activating Hennepin, which is, you know, we've talked about the other elements of Hennepin redesigns happening. Lobbies are not particularly active. I was just curious. I love the stairwell as we talked about. Is there any consideration of moving that to 31st to keep more commercial on Hennepin? I said happy either way, but like just in terms of active spaces on Hennepin, if it's a lobby, unless you are a resident, you're kind of walking by it. So I was just curious on the thought on why the lobby on Hennepin versus 31st, or if there's flexibility there or not.
I would add to that, another option would be, or the lobby off of that public stair on the interior, from the interior rather than on the street. But same concept, like to allow for more retail there.
Yeah, you know, we really looked at numerous places to have that lobby. Circulation wise, with the parking ramp and with the grocer, the best spot for it was along Hennepin. You know, but it's a very small lobby, and adjacent to that small lobby is some active uses. For instance, we're looking at a restaurant tenant next to the lobby, and in addition, we're going to have some of our more active uses, amenity spaces in that area as well. So yeah, we looked at a bunch of different configurations of this, and that really was the spot that worked the best for the building.
And we did study moving it around the corner extensively, and with kind of, as John said, with the floor plate that a grocer will require, plus vehicular access there, and the circulation in the ramp, there wasn't any way to make that work. And but we actually, so that was kind of where we started. But then as the design evolved, we really like this location, because we think it's a nice complement to the new entry to the center. And it does work, I think, really well for how, you know, residents will circulate from the street experience in through the building.
I guess in the absence of other questions, I'm going to ask more of my questions. What time where are we at? Am I way over time? Oh, I am over time. Okay, my other two questions are very brief. We do have this like tremendous roof that all of your residents are looking down on with the existing retail. I know, again, that this might bump into like, well, that's not really your scope, but is North Pond considering, you know, developing that sort of fifth elevation I mean, is that an opportunity for green roof? Is that solar opportunity? Not a super great solar opportunity, I suppose, but could be things that we might be thinking about there. I mean, especially if Can Wonderland's already going to be up on the roof and whatnot.
Yeah, we're just getting into the design of the retail part of it. There has been some discussion about if a restaurant goes into one of the second floor spaces, do you activate the roof similar to Can Wonderland? But I don't think that's been fully realized yet.
Can I follow up? So maybe can you dig in a little bit more about that second floor space? Because I think I have similar concerns about sort of the cohesion of the overall development. If South Pond or North Pond is doing Can Wonderland this, and then you're doing that, and the two aren't. So I guess, yeah, the second floor space and sort of how those two will interact. Or I know it's early, but concern is that there's just going to be kind of the balkanization that we have in the existing use.
Yeah, we're actually the architect on the retail remodel as well. So we're working on ways to make it a very cohesive development. As you can see on this level, there is access from the residential elevators here into the retail center. So yes, we are looking at this as one cohesive project. So yeah, your comments are welcome, and we are looking at that. One impediment to that is because of the different uses, this wall here has to be a 3-hour wall. So there can't be a lot of pedestrian connections through that wall.
What's a 3-hour wall?
It's a firewall. It's a separation wall between different uses that it limits the amount of openings you can have through that wall.
The idea is that one of those buildings can burn to the ground and the other one is just
got
fine.
it. Okay.
Exactly.
So if there was
And in our world, a 3-hour wall is a substantial wall. You know,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
yeah. So I think, you know, with this
say-
kind of grand staircase idea and creating a bit better flow up to that second level, and then having the access you can get right from, you know, that second level skyway into the residential building. You know, those things I think are going to just improve the pedestrian flow on that second level. And as John said, we are viewing this as one giant cohesive project. So I think that the access to the retail and being able to access that without leaving the building is a amenity for the residents, and we view it that way. So we want to make sure that you know, that traffic flow makes sense.
And would there be access to the in and out of the grocery from the retail, or would that just be?
So right now,
on Hennepin and 31st.
So right now we're, we don't have a grocery yet. That will really depend on what grocery we get, if they will allow direct access. But right now we are showing a door into that grocery from the residential lobby.
Looking at the design.
From the residential lobby, but there won't be access to the grocer directly from inside the center.
Correct. This access here is for emergency access only.
Scott, did you have another comment you want to make before I?
Yeah. So am I looking at this right? So on the second floor of the building, there's a parking ramp. Is that this one?
Yes.
Here? That's
The second story, so above the grocery tenant, will be resident parking. So there's 116 stalls for residences.
I got
you. My last question, which might help kind of clear up maybe some confusion about like where the retail component is at versus this residential component. Can you give us an idea? First off, clarify as I'm understanding it, this residential project is sort of one project, and the retail project is like a separate scope or a separate contract. Is that accurate? Kind of. I mean, I know you're thinking about them together, but the reason I asked that is because my real question is about schedule, right? So where are we at with the current schedule on the residential portion scope of the project, and where are we at with on the schedule for the retail remodel?
So we would, the plan would be if we get this project approved, we would start construction of everything that's happening at the same time. And there would be, yeah, so the excavation, demolition, all of that work would start to happen. And then really there's a kind of I mean, it's sort of the line that you see in the plans here, where we would have a team, a construction team working on what's happening on the retail side, and then a kind of a separate team related, all part of one big team, really focused on the residential. So from a execution standpoint and logistics standpoint, it will flow together. But from a contract standpoint, honestly, how we end up doing that may be dictated a bit by financing and just how we ultimately execute the overall financial deal. But from a project management standpoint, us in North Pond are working on the entire thing together.
So like, I guess my question is, so like, when are you slating to permit the project or projects? When do you need to get back in front of city council? Are you completing construction and whatnot? Just so we understand sort of how many more opportunities we have to engage with you, whatnot.
So our entitlement set we're issuing on March 25th, and that'll put us on the May 9th Planning Commission. And then there's, if it gets approved there's an appeal period. And if it's appealed, it'll go to city council. So right now we're looking at potentially starting demolition in late summer or early fall.
And what you're bringing in front of city council is the whole project, including the retail component for 7.
So the project is one PUD, planned unit development. So the project going before planning commission is one PUD. So it'll include the entire project.
Okay.
Are you seeking any variances from the zoning code?
There's a couple of variances. One of them being, one of the requirements in this area is that you build up to a 0 lot line. Because we're stepping the building back, that will require some amenity points that I referenced before. So stepping the building back requires you, as part of the PUD, to do some amenity points. Also, there's a requirement in the PUD that a retail tenant can only be 20,000 square feet. Because of the grocer, we are asking for, it's not really a variance, it's a amendment to the planned unit development to allow for a bigger tenant than 20,000 square feet.
And the parking, right, John? Exceeding the parking.
And the parking also requires amenity points in the PUD.
I guess the only other feedback that I wanted to say, just in light of that the retail component is sort of staying as it is, really, is, I continue to be concerned that we have an interior facing retail component on when we're trying to activate the exterior of this building. And so I guess I understanding that you're sort of in the midst of figuring out what's going to happen in there. I guess I'm looking for some innovation on how to activate or use such a deep floor plate when the main retail access that I think that our goal is for that retail access to occur along Lake Street in Hennepin. And so then what do we do with this interior mall when we know at the end of the day that the reason it's not working is because this is not the place for an interior mall. So I guess I would hope for some more innovative ideas on like what we do to sort of leverage what's there. I'm all about like leveraging existing bones for purposes of sustainability and reuse and all of these things. But how do we sort of fix that? So
yeah, absolutely. And I think as we re-tenant the building, that's the opportunity to address those ideas. One of the reasons why we're putting some of the outdoor spaces is to drive some of that activity to the exterior, but that'll really be determined by what tenants are along Hennepin and Lake. But that's a great point, and we'll keep that in mind.
Well, we went way over and it was mostly my fault. Are there any other last thoughts?
I'll just ask the final question I put in the chat. So the aesthetics of the building you're designing right now are remarkably similar to the other buildings in the area, which can be good or bad. I was curious, is your goal to make this building, which is kind of the at the heart of Uptown, stand out in some way, where what was formerly Calhoun Square tried to be kind of ostentatious with its big crown and brighter lights, or is the goal to just blend in with the other surrounding newer developments, which is kind of what this seems to be?
Yeah, we're looking at different ways to set off the residential component of it. That's why we've introduced, it's hard to tell in the renderings, but the kind of copper colored metal panel is a metal panel that, depending on the time of day and with shadowing, it will almost feel like it'll change color. So we think that's something that's very unique to this area and is going to set it off from some of the other buildings. At the base, we really wanted to bring in the history of the retail center and the area brownstones. That's why we've incorporated that brown, the brown colored brick. But we also are setting it apart with some metal panel accents, and we think that's pretty unique to the area as well. So yes, we're when we make our submittal to the Planning Commission, there'll be some refined renderings that show some of those elements a little bit better. These renderings were very sketchy. We wanted your input before we finalized the design. So that's why they're a little bit more sketchy, but those are some of our ideas.
Will this be the last time we talk to you then, before sort of where you're getting the entitlement issues? So this isn't like final building permit. So what are our other opportunities to engage with you?
So we'll be submitting, as I said, on 3/25, and then a great time to engage would be at the Planning Commission meeting. It's a public hearing. We'll get comments at that meeting as well, and we'll take those. And then I don't know if there's going to be another neighborhood meeting scheduled, but I would be happy to present some of the refinements to the design if you guys want to meet again.
That we are always, as much engagement as we can get is always what we're looking for. I think we'd be interested in some of it, in the evolution of it. I know that we've got other neighbors that aren't here today that probably would have peppered you with a lot more questions about the landscape and plantings on the landscape and how the street's going to come together. So if we could meet again to sort of see how that continues to develop, I think that would be appreciated.
Absolutely. I would love to meet again after we submit. You never want, I'd rather talk through some ideas and issues prior to that public hearing and answer questions prior to that. So I will talk to North Pond and we can definitely have another engagement.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and it looks like a wonderful project. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it.
Great.
Well,
thank
that
you.
honestly, that really means a lot to us to have neighborhood support. And so we appreciate the comments. And as John said, you know, we'll keep you engaged, but feel free to reach out to us as well if you just want a quick update or you have questions as we work through the process. But it was really great to hear from all of you, and thanks for welcoming us to this meeting. And we're really excited about this project.
So Mike, thank you.
Thank you for
Bye.
coming.
Ann and
Great.
John, just real quick, lastly, would you mind sharing the site plan with LHENA so that we can share it with our community in addition to this video?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can send you, why don't you send me your contact information and I can send you this presentation that we had today.
All right, thanks, John. I'll do that in the chat.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you. So we do have a couple of other sort of brief updates, like neighborhood updates.